Looks like we got another fun demo on our hands, ladies and gents. If you dig third-person action roguelites like Risk of Rain 2, then the Last Citadel might just be right up your alley. Travel through the Citadel to search for artifacts to make your beefiness beefier, customize your characters to fit your playstyle, adapting the MMO trifecta of tank, DPS, and healer to create fun and interesting combos of each role, or just go with the baseline, break down. Fight baddies as you progress to each boss, all while leveling up and playing with various builds on your dudes. Judging from the demo, the Last Citadel looks like a promising, albeit flawed, new addition to the action roguelike genre. So sit back and put your feet up as you join me on a glimpse into the Last Citadel. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Jarek Defiler, the Patient Gamer here, taking a dip into the Last Citadel demo. Recommended to me by and being tested with my main gaming partner, my little brother, the Last Citadel is a really interesting addition to our roguelike collection. Developed and published by one solo Montreal-based indie dev, Martin Lemay, under his indie studio Honest Demon, The Last Citadel was a surprising little treat for us. I was a bit skeptical at first, as it looked like it was simply a Risk of Rain 2 clone, Risk of Rain 2 being one of the best, if not the best, action roguelikes ever made in my amazingly humble opinion. Expect a lot of comparisons here in that regard, as it's the closest we got. And given this is Honest Demon's first title, I tend to err on the side of caution. But after reading their mission statement or goal on the studio's website, where they admonish the industry for endless microtransactions or NFT exploitation, as well as advocating for player and dev transparency, I was hopeful. It also seems like Lemay is very open and communicative to player feedback, so after playing a good 6 hours or so of the demo, we were mostly pleasantly surprised with the pudding pop. The Last Citadel's demo conveyed to us a sensual baseline of mechanics and fundamental action roguelike concepts that really make for a fun game. It took the genre and all that it entails and spun a little twist on it that sets it apart from other games in the genre. For starters, The Last Citadel is based on the MMO Holy Trinity, tank, DPS, and healer roles. Not something you normally see in an action roguelike. But although you can choose between said roles, the game doesn't pigeonhole you into them. It has a fairly robust customization scheme, pretty sweet. For starters, your character has access to a variety of abilities, like a hero shooter. You get 4 activatable abilities per character, 1 weapon, and a passive at the start of each run. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You can customize the abilities before you begin your run. You can take, say, a tank build and tweak it to be a healing tank build. You can take a DPS role and make it more of a tanky one with high burst damage if you want. You can also customize your weapon loadout. You're granted 3 weapon slots throughout the entirety of your run, but you can only start the run with 1 weapon of your choosing. You can also choose 1 passive from a variety of them at the start of your run as well. Passives are the bread and butter of creating a build during your run. Where Risk of Rain 2 gives you items, The Last Citadel gives you weapons and passives. Now, as you progress through the meta, you will use prisms that you obtain on your runs to unlock more abilities, passives, and weapons that you can then use in your customized loadout. So yeah, fairly unique system here compared to other games in the same genre, and allow me to expound a bit on the different aspects that make up thine character. As said before, the passives and abilities are broken up into the Holy Trinity categories: offensive, defensive, and support. Naturally, each one comes with its own themes. Offensive revolves around DPS, which is damage per second for those not familiar. This will have damage dealing abilities and perks that improve your damage overall. Defensive is going to be your tank category with things like crowd control, beefing up your defenses and resistances. Damage reduction stuff. Lastly, support is your healing category, my cup of tea, as I'm always the healer in MMOs. Lots of different kinds of heals and passives that benefit healing and other utility stuff as well. So as mentioned before, you can mix and match these to create unique fun builds. For instance, my favorite one was a tanky healing build that found me just out-healing the damage I received through a variety of self-healing passives as well as activatable ability heals. The cool thing is, you can also get a lot of passives that benefit the entire team. One such passive was the Paladin's Aura that would grant your party healing every 2 seconds. It's pretty good, and like most roguelites, all the passives are upgradable, yay! Now, unlike abilities which are predetermined and chosen before starting each run, passives are much more random and will be mostly granted to you during your playthrough in the form of shrines that you spend crystals on to unlock, as well as upgrade the passives you already own. Think chests in Risk of Rain 2. So this adds into the fun random nature of each run that allows for build and entertainment diversity and replayability. You never know what you're gonna get, which can lead to some fairly awesome or, to be honest, fairly crappy builds depending. But once you learn the game and understand the mechanics, you tend to be able to have at least a serviceable build at minimum each run. For the several runs we did, I think I found myself sucking pavement with a completely unviable build maybe twice in total. And that was just bad RNG and likely poor decisions on my part. Now, it's not all just passives and abilities, no siree. The Last Citadel takes it a step further and introduces an additional mechanic. Weapons. That's right, on top of choosing your sexy passives and abilities, you also get the opportunity to choose what weapons you want to use with, again, up to a maximum of 3. Each weapon has its own ammo pool with the exception of the starting Junker rifle, which has unlimited ammo. So you do have to keep that in mind, as ammo scarcity can be a problem if you're not careful. So much so that there's even an ability that grants an ammo box, whoopee. But there is a great deal of variety when it comes to the weapon types. You have shotguns, auto rifles, pseudo-sniper rifles, rocket launchers, miniguns, swords and axes, cursed weapons that grant great power but at a cost, and other unique weapons like this one gun that shoots little black holes, which was pretty fun. There's also a lot of hidden mechanics with some of the weapons, such as being able to parry with melee weapons or even charging them to cast a range attack. So it's worth experimenting and playing around with them in the lobby, especially once you start unlocking new ones. As you progress in the run, you will come across different shrines and upgrade kiosks where you can then add modifiers to your weapon or just upgrade them outright. Lots of different things you can do on that front that make for even more customizable sexiness, yeah. Really cool stuff there, as the weapon variety is a lot of fun and adds a nice layer of depth to the already pretty decent ability and passive mechanics. But there are some issues in the weapons department that I'll get into in the criticism section, so stay tuned. Aesthetically, the Last Citadel has a really unique art style. It does that border shading that Borderlands made so popular, but it's a bit more subtle here, which I appreciate. From an aesthetic point of view, the enemy and player character design is really cool and unique. Gives me Doom vibes with a dash of steampunk. Hellish looking and full of pipes. The background images in the lobby are my favorite, as you're given these gorgeous views of massive landscapes with a giant black hole and all these asteroids floating around with the Citadel in the back. Then you have this giant flying ship thing hovering overhead. It's all very cool, and you can tell LeMay put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. Given his stance of transparency, he has stated that a lot of the assets here are in other games as well, and he would retexture them and tweak them a bit to fall more in line with the Last Citadel's themes. So he probably got many or most of them from asset stores and whatnot, and then worked on them to fit into his game. Personally, I have no problem with this, so long as you're honest about it and fully transparent, which he seems to be. Asset stores are there for a reason after all, and it makes a solo game dev's work much smoother, so bravo there, Honest Demon Breakdown. And just a cool note here, I love when devs put in fun little transitions from the main menu, and here you can see how when you click play, it just zooms into your hub area rather than force you into a loading screen. Little touches like this warm a cold, black, patient gamer's heart. Yeah, breakdown. Unlike Risk of Rain 2, the maps aren't open in the Last Citadel, but rather a room-by-room basis sort of deal. They're fairly linear, and you will arrive in a fight where it will lock down your room until you clear it sort of thing, like a little mini arena. So the maps may leave a bit to be desired in that regard, but they're still serviceable. Not horrible, but not great either. I'm looking forward to what else they may have in store, because despite the tight and linear feel to the maps, they still have a unique way about them that sets each one apart. Granted, full disclosure, the demo only has 3 maps, including that of the first boss, which is the cutoff point. That said, the first run allows you to loop back to the first map with all your weapons and stats in order to continue grinding before you set off to get the boss. It ups the difficulty for your second run, but you can get significantly stronger as a result, which was pretty cool. Performance was fine for us across the board for the most part, no frame drops or anything like that. I did have to cap the frame rate because my RTX 5090 was going into overdrive and pushing 400 frames per second, but capping at my monitor's refresh rate of 144 left things perfectly fine. We did have a bug here or there, but none of them were consistent or repeatable. Now, my last point of praise is that there does appear to be a great deal of things to unlock in the meta, as well as a great deal of map variety, I assume, given what we've experienced in the demo. Much of the unlocks were deactivated in the demo, but from what we saw, there is a good number of ability, passive, and weapon unlocks coming in the full release that will allow for all sorts of fun and unique builds. So that's the good stuff now. What about the bad? What are my criticisms? Well, for starters, the most egregious offender here in the Last Citadel is that of the camera view on some of the player's characters models, specifically the larger ones. Being a third-person shooter, you have to take into account perspective as you see your character on the screen, yeah? So when you get large character models that take up a huge chunk of the screen, you get the major problem of them blocking the player's view. This is a huge problem in the Last Citadel. When using larger characters when trying to aim up or straight ahead, you will not be able to see what you're aiming at because your character's model literally blocks your entire crosshair. This is nearly game breaking, as I would be wasting massive amounts of ammo just trying to hit something that I knew was there, but I simply could not see it to pinpoint it. I really hope they fix this because some of my favorite runs were with the larger character types, and I would hate to not want to play those in the full release due to not being able to see what I'm aiming at. Yeah. Simple fix would be to just shrink the models, maybe move the models to the side of the screen for more of an over-the-shoulder perspective, or allow the camera to pull back a bit like in Risk of Rain 2. As it is now, camera perspective is really bad at times. Given this is an action roguelite, the action bit is somewhat important. Here it's slightly lackluster, not gonna lie. It's serviceable, mind you, but rather clunky, with melee being the worst bit of it. It's very stiff and difficult to see if your attacks are connecting. Gunplay isn't much better, as a lot of the time you simply aren't getting good feedback from your weapons. The crosshairs on many of the guns are like half the size of the screen, even when enhancing with right click, and there's not really any punch or feel to the guns. A lot of times you can't see any of your projectiles either, so you will often not know where your bullets are landing because the crosshairs are so unreliable and just huge. This is compounded by the fact that the enemies don't really react to being shot at all that well. Enemy animations are somewhat amateurish here, unfortunately, and can make targeting them irritating due to their odd, stiff movements. The character movement itself is also somewhat janky. Outside of a movement speed passive, there just isn't a lot of mobility or fluidity. It's very stiff. Jumping is pretty weak as well because your character jumps like an 85-year-old grandma trying to get her hat out of a tree on a windy day. Just little hops, you know what I'm saying? There's also a great deal of invisible walls, which I can't stand in game, so you try to jump over a simple railing or crate just to find an invisible wall around or behind it blocking your way. Likewise, asset hitboxes on static environmental objects are larger than they appear, which often results in you not being able to hit enemies behind the asset because it absorbs your attacks despite not hitting the object itself. It just keeps hitting the hitboxes that surround the object. The random nature of choosing passives can be an issue as well at times. You may go an entire run without having any healing passes being offered when you really need it. Other times you may get a passive you want that is paramount for your build, but then never see it again and thus leaving you unable to upgrade it. As such, I think having more reliable ways to upgrade the passives you already own would be a nice boon. You can re-roll your options when purchasing a passive shrine, but that costs crystals, so it can be a problem when it comes to currency. Maybe implement a shrine that only upgrades your passives rather than offering you new ones would be nice, I don't know. During your run, you can also trade crystals with members of your party, but when you enter the trade menu, it doesn't show how many crystals you or they have, which is a slight inconvenience as you then have to remember how much you have and how much they have so you can manually enter the correct amount. A mini-map or quick map would be awesome here as well, because as it is now, there is none. Some of the rooms in that first level are mirrored, for example, and you can often find yourself backtracking by accident because everything looks the same. There doesn't appear to be any animation canceling in the game, which makes shooting into a sprint or vice versa very finicky. Enemy spawning and density could be improved across the board, I feel. There's lots of empty rooms you'll be passing through with no enemies, and when they do spawn, there's only a few of them, so it feels a bit weak. I'd say up the ammo and ammo drops and regen while upping enemy density so you can have more action throughout your run with less downtime. The boss fight was a bit buggy for us at times as it wouldn't stop attacking my brother's body when he died. In the fight, the boss spawns clones that chase you around, so I was running from the clones while the boss was just standing there attacking my little brother's body. It also lays down fire patches that it kept spamming on him, so I couldn't even revive him. It was fairly annoying, but that wasn't a consistent issue, to be fair. My little brother also got a bug where the passive menu wouldn't exit, so he was stuck seeing this until we were able to find another shrine. I had to explain to him how to follow me like he was a blind person. Funny thing is though, that resulted in him getting an extra passive somehow, so breakdown I guess. Lastly, when clicking the option in the developer message to give feedback, it takes you to a website that says it's under construction. So yeah, not much help there. As you can see, there are a few issues, mostly technical, that I think the game should strive to remedy. But the baseline, the foundation of the Last Citadel, is really solid, I would say. LeMay obviously knows what he's doing when it comes to game mechanics for sure. There's a lot of good ideas and implementations here. They could just use a bit of polish. The passives and abilities are fun and unique, and not just boring percentage increases. The weapons are varied, and each one brings something different and special to the table depending on which you choose, even with the clunkiness of the physics. The build and character customization is very well done and innovative for a roguelite of this nature. Hats off to Honest Demon there, and given the demo piqued my interest and its limited capacity, I am very much intrigued to see what the full release has to offer. I am also very lenient on the issues with the gunplay and combat because this is a game made by one guy. I'm not just going to throw a hissy fit over some of the physics not being perfect, you know? As someone who also dabbled in indie game development back in the day myself, I very much understand that one person isn't going to be able to get every aspect of their game 100% perfect right out of the gate. And no one should expect as much, to be honest, especially when it comes to 3D titles. What I see with The Last Citadel, though, is another example of a game made by a gamer for gamers. This very well may be the next Kinshi in a sense. There is just a lot of innovation here, and from what I can tell, LeMay is passionate about his work on The Last Citadel, and you can see the love put into this game. And I think that effort should be praised and even rewarded. I personally think the game is worth checking out after what we experienced in the demo. Despite its flaws, we had a blast with it, and I see a lot of potential here. And always keep in mind the full release may be very different, hopefully for the better. So if you guys like Risk of Rain 2, I would keep The Last Citadel on your radar. I recommend trying out the demo to see if it's your cup of tea, and hopefully the full release is just as good if not better. Thanks for watching my humble demo review of The Last Citadel, ladies and gents. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd be so kind. Hit that notification bell for future videos. Hopefully I can start putting out more soon, given I'm on my first vacation in over a year. This has been Jarek Defiler, sitting with a smile of hope on my face for Honest Demon, and that which is The Last Citadel. You all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are. And go support some indie devs, yeah.